Hello, right. Obviously not a lot's happening with the Westminster at the moment, the way things are, we're getting parts and so on and so forth. And also the car's not here, it's at another unit, so I'm not able to travel to work on it. So what I have been doing, I've been ragging on this a little bit. This rocker cover, the polishing of it, I've kind of tried to do a sort of head and shoulders on it. I don't know how good you can see that. You can probably see there's the dull side and there's the good side, maybe. So what I did, my wet and dry paper arrived because the first time round a few weeks ago when I started it, I ran out. So I got some various grades. So I tried cutting it down with a 600 grade wet and dry, and then smoothing that off with 1000 grit wet and dry, and then buffing it with the auto sew polish using the mutton cloth or cutting cloth or stockinette, whatever you want to call it, and the polish. And it's come out quite well. To me, it's a lot better than leaving it like that, and that's how it comes out. And you can probably just see the brass tags don't look too bad either. But I don't want it to be 100% perfect. I just want it to look a lot better than this. So it just goes to show that with just a limited amount of equipment, some wet and dry, and a little bit of metal polish that you can buy in Halfords or anywhere, any other automotive shop, and a bit of elbow grease, you can get a lot better finish than if you were to leave it like that. So that's where we are with that anyway. So I'm going to leave that a little bit because there's no point filming that. It's a very boring job. It's just polishing, elbow grease. So I'm going to have to put a few more hours into it to get it where I want it to be. Yeah, so I have had some parts arrive, which is always good. Just to give my hands a bit of a clean off. Yeah. And I'm not advising you clean your hands with brake cleaner, but it does work. Right. So parts that have arrived, I've got two of these. These are the Piper Cross air filters, performance air filters for the HS6 SU carburetors. I could have gone down the road of K&N, but they're a lot more expensive, and I'm on a bit of a budget. So they're not perfect. I wouldn't expect them to be for the price, but they aren't made too badly. Obviously that's the side that goes onto the carburetor, and that's the side you can see. And there's a steel construction under like a steel netting, and then you've got this kind of foamy stuff on the top, and you can see, probably I'm gonna hold it there. There's like a red stuff on the inside as well. I don't want to damage it, but you might just be able to see that. Yeah, there's some sort of different material inside. So that's those. Got two of those. I did toy with the idea of using the original airbox. The only thing with that, as you'll see, is I'll put up a picture in a minute. The carburetors on that are mounted, I don't know what the right term would be, but it's horizontal with the block. So they're straight in, they're level with it. Whereas the new manifold, the carburetors are actually angled by about, I'm not too sure, let's say, for example, 40 degrees or something like that. And they're angled upwards, so that means that if you try bolting the box to the carburetors, it would have to be pointing downwards like that, and it just wouldn't work. And also the holes are all the wrong size, and I expect they're not the same distance apart, so I can't really use the original airbox. And also, if I use the original airbox, I would probably be reducing a bit of performance, and also you'd lose that induction noise that you get with obviously the performance filters. So that's not happening. Right, so that's the two filters, or the two performance air filters that I've got. There are other parts. I've got. I'll just put these bits out to explain. Got a crankcase breather. You can see in there. It's another Piper Cross part. It looks like it's got the similar sort of foam to it as the air intake ones do. So I've also got some new rubber breather tubes and pieces as well, because the old ones you should probably never really rely on them, because they can start to break up inside and go hard. So you should get new ones. Pretty much, as you can see on there, this rocker cover at the moment has that 90-degree elbow like that. That will be replaced with the Austin Healey one. The T-piece, which is for the Austin Healey, that one there, so that just screws straight into the top of the rocker cover. This pipe here goes on there, and it wouldn't for the camera. There we go. That goes on there, and that goes into the, like that. So that tube there, there's a tube, metal tube sticking out of the cam follower cover, the rear cam follower cover at the back of the engine. So that breathes through there into the rocker cover at the top. You've got this tube here which replaces that one, and it just goes and drops it. This tube here that replaces that one, and then you have what would have happened, this tube on here, I expect, goes on there like that, and that would have probably gone into the airbox to be basically sucked out or sucked into the engine again to be recycled. That's not going to happen because I don't have obviously the original airbox or an Austin Healey style airbox. So what I'll be doing is using the filter, so that will just vent to atmosphere. It won't be sucked into the back. It won't be recycled back into the engine. This is for the. I'm not 100% happy with this, but I will live with it. It's not like you see it. I don't know where these things are made. They're probably made in China, probably, I don't know. This is the heat shield, and this plate here, as you can see, this is where the carburetors bolt onto. So this goes onto the manifold. I think it does. It might go first, it might go second, I can't remember. Then you've probably got your heat block, and then you've got the carburetor on top, or vice versa. I'm not sure. I have to see how on the diagram. And it's a heat shield. There's like a, well, I don't think that's going to be asbestos anymore. It'll be some other sort of modern equivalent. But there's a piece of heat shielding on there, and that I would have thought would be the exhaust side, and then it will look like that as you're looking at the engine. So this will be at the front of the engine, and this will be at the back of the engine. And I presume they've made it so if there was a fuel leak, the fuel would run off and not all over the exhaust and catch fire. Hopefully I won't have any fuel leaks. The only thing I'm a little bit annoyed about is when it's been made, I don't know if you can see that, it looks like someone's had a double take at the holes when they've been riveting. They've also got the holes lined up wrong or something. I'm not too bothered. That's the colour I was talking about before. That's that kind of Austin Healey, I don't know what you call it, whether it's like a bluey green or something like that. That's what the engines were coloured. I'm not going to paint this the engine green or the BMC engine green. I shall probably put this into like to key it down and spray like a protective heat coat or something like that on it, like a radiator paint or something that won't burn too quickly. So it'll either be silver or black or something like that. So I have bought something else. Sits there. Right. I should go and get it. So what's in the package? Well, let's find out. You're thinking what is it? It's a crummy old toolbox. Basically, that's what it is. It is a crummy old toolbox. Right, so why have I bought this shabby old barn toolbox? The reason being, one thing is the quality. Modern toolboxes that you get, they're relatively cheap. I say relatively cheap, between £30 and £40, maybe £50. The quality of the steel, they're quite thin. I took a measurement earlier, which I'll show you in a second of how. As you can see, modern toolboxes are quite thin. They're not made of thick steel like the old ones. Thin the materials of the toolbox that I've got in my van. And we'll just have a quick look at how thick this one is, because I'll guarantee it's thicker. Well, there's a little bit of rust on there, a bit of paint damage. Yeah, that's 1.1 millimeters thick. I don't know what that is in gauge, but the one in the van I think will show up later is about 0.8 something. So these are a lot thicker, a lot more sturdier. A lot better put together. I can't tell you the make of this one. I assumed in the picture it might have been a G door or something like that. It could be anything. It could be a Stanley or an unknown, but it's a good little toolbox. And the reason I got it is because, like I said, people say back in the day, I remember my granddad having a toolbox like this in his garage, and uncles and whatever, and people having them in the back of their cars as well, because you can carry a reasonable amount in here. And I was expecting this to be smaller. I didn't take a note of the measurement. I thought it was going to be smaller than this, and this is actually quite big. This is actually quite a good sized toolbox. And inside you get, I don't think it's had a lot of use. I think it's just, you can see that you can actually see where a spanner's been. You can actually see an outline of if you can just see that. There's an outline of a spanner in there. So it's had one spanner and some other item. That's what it looks like it's all it's ever carried. And the paint in there is pretty good. And it comes with this tray. It's got the tray for the sockets and other bits and bobs. These are for here. It's like 2 rows of sockets, obviously metric and imperial, which is quite handy. So, the idea with this then is I'll renovate this. I'll give it a little bit of beat around with a hammer to straighten a few edges up. Key it up, and then I'll colour code it to match the car and what that's going to be. And this will live in the boot of the car with whatever tools I'm going to need for a journey. Now, the question is, what tools are you going to put in it? Now, you can't carry every single tool you've got. Now, although the Westminster boot is pretty cavernous, and I'll show you a picture now. Although the boot of the Westminster is pretty cavernous, I'm not gonna, and I could put this toolbox, this one here, this would fit in the toolbox quite well. I'm not going to be doing that. There's no point. All the tools that are in there, not that many that are any good if I'm honest, all the tools in there are really, you're just not going to need it for a big, but little things like small electrical faults, maybe a fuel leak or a coolant leak or possibly a small brake issue or something like that, you're going to be able to fix at the side of the road. But you're going to need the tools to do it. So what are we going to carry? We just need to carry tools that are relevant to the car. Now, there's no point carrying anything that's probably metric, because the car that age, there's nothing on it that's metric. It's all imperial. So what we do need to be carrying is a reasonable set of imperial sockets. Now these are probably going a little bit too big, because anything that requires this size on the car is going to be major work, I'd have thought. I don't even know if there is anything that size. But you need a set of imperial sockets. So that's a start. And that might fit in there. No, it doesn't. It's not just too long. Oh dear. Okay, we'll put those in the bottom then. So that's okay. So we've got a set of imperial sockets. We're obviously also going to need, dig things up and find things, a ratchet. Obviously, 1/2 inch drive ratchet for 1/2 inch drive sockets. So we get a ratchet. A UJ is handy. One of those. Not one of those is. One of those. 2 extensions, short and a long. Breaker bar. This is probably going to be handy more than anything for actually changing a wheel if you don't have a wheel brace. And it saves, if you have one of these, it saves having the wheel brace in the car, because the big wheel braces are quite bulky and that's another thing you don't need. So you've got a small breaker bar like that, that's perfect for doing wheels. So obviously you've got to make sure that you've got a socket in your rail that fits obviously your wheel nuts. So that goes in there. What else have we got? So we've got those. Other things we're going to need, I won't get every single thing out, but we're going to need some imperial spanners relative to your car. It says, what have I got? Probably haven't got every single thing in here, but I've got the basic set. I've got a 3/8, 7/16 or an 11mm if you don't have one of those, it kind of fits. 9/16 or a 14mm, I think. 1/2 inch, I did that in the wrong order, that should have come first. 5/8, 11/16 and 3/4. I think that's, you could probably go up to, again, there's other sizes, but they're the basic sizes you're probably going to need. So you're going to need those. I'll put those in the top. What else we got? BA spanners. I think it stands for British. Is it British Association? I don't know. I'll find out. BA spanners. These are mainly for electrical work on old cars, and these spanners are where points are concerned. And I know definitely this one here fits my one of the nuts on my points where the cable goes on the end of the points. So yeah, definitely a set of BA spanners. Definitely a set of those. Also going to need a plug spanner. Drop that on the bottom of there. So, what else? What else do we need? For me, just in case, I would put a hefty pair of adjustables in, just in case. Maybe if you might use it for turning the engine over or something like that. But it saves having like a massive amount of sockets and bars and all sorts of bits. But this would be quite handy. One of those. That's quite handy. Some people might disagree with me on this one, but I do like to have these sort of swan, I think we call them swan necks, these little pipe grippy things, because they are quite handy if you need to hold something while trying to unwind something else. They're not exactly nice to things, but they, in an emergency, you might need to use those for gripping something while cutting it or something like that. But they're handy. So put those in there. If you need them, I would put these in. If you need them. These are actually my grandfather's, believe it or not. If you have them, a set of Imperial Allen keys, or metric, depending on how old your car is. But I'm obviously talking for the Westminster now and most old BMC stuff. But if it has Allen keys, they're more than likely going to be Imperial. So a set of Imperial Allen keys. Put those in there. I always like to have a half round flat file, very handy, just in case you need to take an edge off of anything for cutting a pipe or something like that. Taking burrs off it is quite handy to have. So I have one of those in there. It's just not quite long enough on that little tray. So I'll put that in the bottom of there. Obviously caution with these because they're incredibly sharp, as we know. A Stanley knife, because if you need to cut a piece of pipe or wire or something, very handy. So a Stanley knife. Now, just in case you have a leak on a pipe and you can't stop it, especially like maybe a rubber one, or if you've got a rubber intersection somewhere where you can stop a leak on a steel pipe, let's say, one of these is quite handy. It's just a pipe clamp using for when you do your brakes, when you want to stop the fluid coming out. So to save you losing a lot of fluid, if you did incur a leak, you could put that on quickly just to save what fluid you've got in your system. And I think that would squash a coolant hose or something if you needed it to. So I think these normally comes in packs of 2, but one would be, I'm sure, would suffice, but they're quite handy in an emergency. So one of those. So what else do we need to carry? Right. I find this quite handy, although it's not the highest quality in the world, but they are quite handy to have. These double-ended screwdrivers, where you can have a flat end, that end, you slide it to pull the collar back, obviously then you have the Phillips that end, or vice versa. Put it in there, slide it in, and then you have the flathead. So it just saves on a bit of space. You've got 2 screwdrivers in one. This isn't the best quality. I've actually had to fix this already by basically Loctiting the thing back together again. But yeah, something like that, that's quite handy to have. Saves a bit of space. Not necessarily this hammer, but hammer's going to be handy. It's a bit bulky, that one. And I think this is pretty much last. A pair of pliers, probably a little bit bigger than this, but I would say probably have a set of beak nose pliers like this, because these will do what the other pliers will do, but also these will kind of get into smaller spaces if you need to. But it's another thing, say carrying 2 sets of pliers. Beak nose will do, and it's also got the side cutters as well if you need to cut wire or anything like that. So it's kind of 2 in 1 really. So sorry about that, I keep getting interrupted with phone calls and whatnot. So where were we? Right. A few more things. Set of feeler gauges. These are going to be really handy if you have to do anything with your tappets or your points while you're out there on the road for whatever reason. So they are really handy. So a set of feeler gauges. Put those in there. Wire brushes. I think that little one there is for doing plugs, and this is more of a harder steel one. But really you need a bigger wire brush than that. I'm just using these as examples, but a wire brush would be handy. But the one for the plugs, that little soft bristle one there, is quite good as well if you need to clean your points up for any reason. And one of these, I think these are really, really handy, because just in case you drop something, there's a magnet on the end of it. You'll be able to put it down into wherever it's gone, the orifice that it's stuck in, and pull it out again, hopefully. So yeah, one of those is really, really handy. Not essential, but really handy, and you can pick these things up really, really cheap. So yeah, magnet on a stick. So looking at that, so we've got our spanners, our BA spanners, our pair of pliers, some Imperial Allen keys, basically a double-ended screwdriver, save some space, a Stanley knife, feeler gauges, wire brushes, little magnetic stick, our assortment of Imperial sockets, UJ, ratchet, 2 extensions, a breaker bar for when doing the wheel, half round file, spark plug spanner, large adjustable spanner, hammer, pair of grips, and the pipe clamp just in case for leaks. So I would say, and oh no, one more thing, one more thing, just in case. This really isn't essential if you don't want it, but if you've got a small multimeter, obviously you can get smaller than this, but a multimeter is quite handy just to make, if you get any electrical issues, it's easier to use this and try and put a bit of wire there and see if there are any sparks or anything like that. At least this is a safer way to check for current if there is any, or if there isn't any. So yeah, and these are relatively cheap now. You can just get a cheap one for your toolbox. So yeah, one of those as well. So I think really, I would say that's relatively concise. That's about what you need without going absolutely berserk. So that's that. And it's not too big. It doesn't take up too much room. Even if you had a mini, that wouldn't really take up too much room. But then there's the question of what parts do you carry, if any. If I was to carry any parts myself on a car of this age, obviously if you're running points, probably a good idea to have a set of points and a condenser, maybe a couple of each, because sometimes condensers out of the box don't even work if you're running the old stock. If you're running like a new electronic ignition system, where it's possible to replace them for the points if they fail, that's obviously that's a good idea, so you can put it back to how it was originally. What else could you carry? Probably a set of plugs, or a couple of plugs, maybe a spare HT lead, obviously quite a long one, so it can go anywhere if you needed it. Some people might go as far as say maybe carrying a spare distributor cap and a rotor arm, possibly. It depends. I think it's down to the individual how much you want to carry in your boot. A lot of it is whether you're ever going to need it. And again with fluids as well, I'm not too sure. I mean, definitely carrying an empty plastic petrol can if you run out of fuel is a good idea. Obviously you've got the spare wheel, this is obvious. But you could carry, obviously, there's other things that you could carry. Definitely, if it's me and I was out on the road, I would be carrying at least something like well, this is Ambrasil, but this is like a WD-40, something like that, like a water dispersant if you needed it, or kind of lubricant, and possibly a can of brake clean. That's quite handy for electrical stuff, so I'll definitely carry those two. Other sundries you could carry. I mean, getting away from parts. I mean, other parts, obvious things. You carry some spare fuses and light bulbs. They're obvious things. They're quite lightweight. You carry those sort of things. But fluids-wise, I mean, you could probably a good idea to carry some engine oil. If you know your engine leaks a little bit, sometimes it's probably a good idea to carry. I guess you could carry a little bit of brake fluid if you needed to. Spare coolant is probably a good idea. But it depends on what you want to do, or it depends on possible known issues that your car has. If you know it's on long journeys, if you know it burns a little bit of oil, then obviously you need spare oil. If you know it loses a bit of transmission oil, it's a good idea to carry it. You just don't want to ram your boot full of stuff that you don't really need to carry. The other things you could also be carrying would be cable ties. Definitely they're a handy thing to carry, and maybe spare Jubilee clips. They're also quite handy just in case you do have one fail or over tighten one and it stops tightening on your coolant hoses, so they're quite a good idea. Electrical tape is another good one to carry. Really, really handy that. Just in case, if you need to tape anything up. That rubber amalgamating tape is quite good. It might be that you get a hole in a coolant hose or something like that. It's just that you can do a temporary repair to bond it up. The other things you can get if you wanted to carry them is you can get things like this fire gum, like exhaust repair paste. You can get it in a kit where it has like a metal sleeve that you put around the exhaust if you've got a hole in it or something like that. That might be a good idea to carry. It's just, I think it all depends on the individual. It depends how, again, it depends how what you think you should carry and how much you should, how much space you've got. There's no point bringing tons of real heavy tools for work that you're not going to be able to do at the side of the road, and there's probably no point bringing parts that you're not going to be able to replace at the side of the road. It should just keep it basic is all I think I'm trying to say. Just keep it basic if you can. Right, there are a couple of things I actually did forget. It's amazing when you try and sort of put video together and try and make a list in your head of what tools you might need. But there is one thing that I didn't think of that's really, really handy that's quite recently come on the market, well, at least the last couple of years anyway, is these small battery booster packs. This one's by a company called Tact Life. I won't show you a video of how you use it or go open the box or anything, because there are other videos out there showing you how to use these, but one of these would be really, really handy in case you get a flat battery. When they're out of the carrier case that's inside the box, they're actually quite small. They're about the size of a video cassette, for those of you who remember what a video cassette is. So they're not very big. So that's another item I forgot, which is really handy. The other one, if you wanted to carry it, probably a hacksaw for cutting metal, if you really needed it for dire circumstances. And the other thing is a jack, and what jack you decide to carry in your car, because we all know, and again I always say it, I'm not trying to teach mum how to suck eggs, but the jack that comes with a car that you put into the side or mount into the chassis to lift it is obviously solely only for lifting it, for changing a wheel. You should never be getting under the car with that kind of jack. With the Westminster, I plan on carrying one of those. You can get them quite cheaply. They're a small hydraulic jack. They come in a carrier case. They cost, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 quid, and they'll easily lift the car up. And they don't take up a lot of room. And if you are going to carry something like that, and you are going to if you do plan on getting underneath the car, think you're going to have to get underneath the car on your journey for whatever reason, it's probably always worth carrying maybe a small set of stubby axle stands that you could keep in the back, or some means of propping the car up safely, and a means of chocking it as well so it can't roll away. So yeah, I can't think of anything else to add. I've got another one of these, another new Austin t-shirt, as you can see there, off of eBay. It shows you the price of the car. Apparently the car used to be £1,149 apparently for a Westminster. So that's another one of my new t-shirts. So there we go. So okay, that's it for this episode. Take care everybody out there, and I'll hopefully have another episode out soon. Okay, bye now.